So now that we're past the first case and you get your feet wet on what to do with these case studies for lifestyle medicine, we're moving on into CJ's next phase of life. So now she's 37 years old. She has 2 children. She's married, and we've got the rest of the case that you can read through there. The purpose of this case is to focus on now we are moving in the first case where she didn't have risk factors and we tried to put together a plan to prevent risk factors. Now we have risk factors. We have obesity as a risk factor here, as you will notice from her body mass index. The line of questioning is very similar in that you want to find out what her estimated heart age is. You're going to do that on her on this one, what her barriers are. But she's also has a goal in mind that she wants to get ready for her class reunion. That's in 6 months, and she's got an idea of how much she wants to weigh for that. So those are the things you need to keep in mind about, can she achieve that? What are the things you want to put together? Now, one of the things I wanted to mention, and this is why I wanted to do a separate video for this particular case, was there is no magic bullet for weight loss. If there were, we wouldn't have this obesity problem in the U.S., right? So there are the reasons why people are obese, overweight, and obese is very specific to them. And so you need to find that information out from CJ of why she gained weight. 23, she wasn't obese, but now she is. And so what happened over the last decade or so why she gained weight and is now in this situation? What is her lifestyle like? What is the culture like of where she lives? What's her physical environment like? What kind of support does she have around for leading healthy lifestyle? All of that information is so vital to the reasons of why she in particular is obese. When I first started the Cardiovascular and Diabetes Risk Reduction Program in 2008, my thought process was very much like pharmacist. That's of course my training. So it is very sequential in weight loss. Okay, so there are formulas. So what I did was design a weight loss worksheet in which you figured out how many calories the individual was taking in initially, just on a day-to-day basis. How many calories is a formula you can use to calculate how many calories they would need to maintain their current body weight. By looking at those 2 numbers in calories, you could figure out if they were gaining weight or maintaining or losing weight. And then you implement an exercise program. You can figure out how many calories you're burning there and then create a caloric deficit. Of course, that's what we need to lose weight, is a caloric deficit where you're expending more calories than you are taking in. And then you can figure out, okay, so we have a 20-pound weight loss as the goal. How long is it going to take us to lose that? And so I worked through this whole worksheet, and students completed these formulas, and by the end you got this is the goal, this is when you would reach the goal. Problem is that it's great. Well, the upside is it's doing it demonstrates to the student in the exercise itself that weight loss isn't magic. It's still a math equation about calories in and calories out. Okay, so obesity in the biomedical sense is not difficult to understand. I'm not a big math person, but I certainly can understand calories in, calories out. But it doesn't necessarily work. That's the downside. Because there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot more variables that affect the calories in, calories out than simply just writing the equation. It's not like you write a prescription for a drug that the individual is going to take on a scheduled basis, and it's just that easy. It doesn't work like that. So the worksheet was great to teach students that it's not magic and how the calories in, calories out comes about. I would show that to participants in the program, and that actually was an effective tool to demonstrate to them too that it's not magic. There is some work you have to do with this, and this is kind of how much, and I still like it for that reason and still occasionally use it for that reason. But the problem is that the goal in the end, if you're losing 20 pounds and you were going to get there in 4.5 months, if that's how your program worked out, rarely ever, if never worked out because there's so many variables that affect calories in, calories out. So I've moved to a different method, and one that may be a little more touchy-feely. Okay, so it's not as sequential anymore in the thought process, but it's more holistic, and it's certainly more about how you feel. And this basis, the basis of the hunger fullness scale is that really comes down to, we were all initially born with the ability to stop eating when we were full. One of the things Nancy and I, my wife Nancy and I, were worried about when we had our first child. We have 4 kids, and one of the things we were first worried about, that we talked to our pediatrician about, is we didn't want to overfeed them. And he said, don't worry, they will stop eating when they're full. And I'll be darned, 4 out of 4, it works every time. They do have the ability to stop eating when they're full. They listen to their body. Our body gives us signals to tell us when we don't need to eat or when we do need to eat. Somehow, between the time when we are able to do this and sometime later, for most people it ends up when they're, sometime in their adolescence, we stop listening. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and we don't need to get into here, I don't think, but for some reason we can't pick up on the cues. This hunger fullness scale is to kind of bring you back a little bit, to have that in mind about listening to the cues your body's giving you that you need to eat or you don't necessarily need to eat. So it's a self-awareness tool that I would like for you to do on yourself also. So on all the questions, all the documentation, so this is what I use in the program now, in the risk reduction program for folks, and so I wanted you to at least get experience using it just on yourself anyway. So try this for a day or 2 or longer if you would like. And again, in the in your book, it does give some explanation on this on page 54 and 55, and then again the scale is on page 173. So read through those pages again to kind of get an idea of at least how to try this for yourself. So how this thing sometimes works, or it seems to work pretty consistently this way, is not only is it help you make you more aware of when you're eating, do I really need food right now, but it also gives you an idea that if I am too hungry, then I'm probably going to overeat. For instance, how it works in many people that I've talked to about this, and I think in my own personal experience, is that, say you're looking at the scale, if you have it in front of you, and you are a 9, or I'm sorry, a 1 or a 2, where you're ravenous, you're too hungry, and you allow yourself to get to that level. Generally what happens is that you eat until you're an 8 or a 9. So it kind of works like a pendulum. So if you're too hungry, you usually eat to a point where you're too full. And why is that? Because generally we eat too fast. No surprise here in America, right? We try to do everything in a hurry, unfortunately. One of the things that would be great for fighting obesity is if we just slowed down our eating, because we're missing those cues, and we eat past the cues. Just a little trivia or so, it only takes us about 7 to 8 minutes to eat a meal in the US. Unfortunately, it takes 10 to 15 minutes for the cues that we have enough food to reach our brain to say to stop eating. So if we would slow down our eating, then we would likely not eat as much, because we're catching those cues that that we've had enough food. And that's aside from the whole issue of it's much more complicated than that, about certain types of foods trigger pleasure centers in our brain, and then it's difficult to stop eating those types of foods. Sometimes we eat because we're bored, sometimes we eat just because for pleasure, and not just for sustenance, and we all get that. So that's more complex than just this hunger fullness scale, of course, so that's something to keep in mind. But anyway, so one of the point of this is to help people understand that if I eat a little bit, more often, perhaps I won't be as hungry and then won't overeat. And at the same time, my blood glucose can stay at a level where I can stay functional and feel good throughout the day. So just a couple things to keep in mind as you perhaps try this on yourself. So that's the second case on obesity for CJ. So again, let me know if you have any questions. I'm looking forward to reading your cases. Thanks.